Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, and our brand new study in Plotinus. And it is a work entitled The Essential Plotinus. It's translated by O'Brien, but it is from the Enneads that were originally written between 263 to 270 AD by Plotinus. And we begin with a 20-page introduction, and I think it's a pretty good introduction. It gives us a pretty good idea of what we're going to be looking at. And by the way, the Enneads means 9, so it's like the 9 principal mystical truths that are being discussed, but we have a pretty good introduction. We're going to look at the one, the dialectic, and the return moment. Let's go to block 1. Now, Plotinus was from Alexandria, Egypt, but did move to Rome. He studied in Alexandria for, I believe that should say 20 years. He studied in Alexandria for 20 years. Then at the age of 40, he moved to Rome, and he took up and posited a doctrine of the one. The doctrine of the one, which transcends being and transcends knowledge. He borrowed this from Philo of 40 AD. So it's the one who transcends, the one who is incomprehensible. And he did learn from Numenius, the Pythagorean. Plotinus also posited the notion of the psyche, the soul, as a philosophical principle that he learned from a Stoic influence. In addition to the one and the self, he also posited theosis unification of mystical theology, achieved through a purging of the mind and progressive spiritual contemplation. And it went through 3 stages for Plotinus: the body and sensation, and then the soul and ethical concerns, and then the intellect and spiritual vision. All were abbreviated under the category of the beauty of the one. It's all about the category of beauty. Contemplation progresses from detachment, from particularity, to attachment to universality, the immovable unity, or the one. The one is absolute simplicity, and out of which proceeds both a stream of universality and a stream of differentiation. And the one is that which makes the multiplicity in creation intelligible, because the one is the essence of all existence. The one is the essence of all existence. And so in block 1, we realize that this Neoplatonic philosophy will emphasize one incomprehensible unity out of which flows 2 streams of creation. So let's move on to block 2, and we'll take a look at the dialectic, because we know we begin with the one, but now what about the practical level of living? We live, according to Plotinus, in the experience of dialectic. And it's a dialectic in 3 parts, which all serve the mystical return to the one. It is the mystical path of the soul. First up is to negate the realm of multiplicity, negate the sensate surface image in favor of the universal forms behind surface reality. It's the work of the interior selfhood. Step 2, affirmation of the forms that are the otherness, the forms of otherness. We enter into logical inquiry into the forms. We employ logic, and we employ the logic of syllogism, but the logic of syllogism will reach a limit point beyond which it cannot go. So 2b, reaching the limit point of logic. The first step negated the sensate image. The second step affirmed the form behind image. Now we must transcend the limit point of logic. Third step, the realm of positing outside the self. In order to reach noetic truth, in other words, in order to reach a comprehension of the design of reality in the realm of transcendence. So 3b, the realm of transcendence, where we reach the unknowing of the one, the supra-intelligible, which is the contemplation of contemplation in dialectical internal movement. Contemplation, 3c, contemplation of contemplation. It's the dialectic of agape, self-giving, love. It creates interpurging of the soul so that we can reach an internal blessed silence. So theosis, deification, is blessed silence, 3d. This is ecstasis, out of existence, ecstasy moment, ecstatic moment. 3e, man becomes microcosm. Through going out of the self and then returning to the self in dialectical movement, forming an internal, intelligible model of the world. Every return moment in our internal contemplation will refine this process. So it's a continual contemplation of contemplation, mystical, ecstatic moment, where we examine the external world, we go out of the self, but then we return to the self and we shape the design of providence, the model of providence, the design behind surface reality, the genuine, real reality. So we begin with a motivational attitude toward the one. And then block 2, we move into the internal work of the soul, which will eventually end up being 2.7, contemplation of contemplation itself, the internal dialectical movement of interpurging of the soul, reaching theosis as blessed silence. Then we can, in a mystical vision, apprehend the design of creation, the design of real reality. So that return moment is very important, and that's what we're going to look at in block 3, the return moment of introspection, when we start refining this design model of creation. So block 3, note 1, preparing for theosis. By the tendency of our soul aiming toward oneness and participating in the soul's inner movement, which is communion with the immortal. After going out of the self into the consideration of external reality, we return into the self for introspective communion with the divine, with the spirit. Therefore, tendency toward oneness and returning into the self will bring about communion of theosis, unification with the divine, which is introspection at the very center of the soul. It is harmony with the one. The veil of multiplicity is lifted, and perception of the beauty of the one is perceived. Perceiving beauty. This is done within the radiance of intelligence at our proper interior, which is the image of God within us. So here's your key point, 3.6. We are headed toward true self-knowledge. Kentron, or Kantron, is the precise point of contact within us where we very precisely connect with our soul, with the divine. We are bound to the eternal at this Kentron, point of contact. It's the place of mystical experience within. It's that latent image of God, that contact point for the possibility of mystical experience. Now, mystical experience is pathema. It's the space of being acted upon by God, acted upon by the divine. It is the realm of positing. It's between subjectivity and objectivity. It is not either one. It is between subjectivity and objectivity. It's the realm of positing of the real. It's where spiritual desire seeks Sabbath rest in the eschaton fulfillment of creation. So we are being acted upon by the transcendence of the divine at this very precise point of contact within our soul, where image of God connects with divine spirit. And we experience mystical experience, which is called theosis, unification with the divine. So the model for Plotinus is very simply a motivational directedness toward the one by concretely involving ourselves in the internal work of dialectic, going out of the self to consider external reality, and then returning to the self to formulate the forms that make up the composite of the one real existence. And therefore the return moment of introspection is extremely important for the event of mystical experience, where that Kentron, point of contact within us, connects through communion with the holy, with the divine, and we are acted upon. We passively are acted upon by the Spirit. But it's because we have gone out of ourselves. We have entered into the call to dialectic. And the call to dialectic calls us to mystical union. It's call to mystical union through the concrete work of dialectic, all motivated by that intentionality to reach the one. So that's our triad: the one, the intentionality to move toward the one, the concrete work of dialectic. We answer the call to dialectical work, which draws us into the introspective moment of the mystical path of contemplation of contemplation. That is a mystical, to even say it is mystical, the contemplation of our own contemplative work. And we will refine again, again, and again, over and over dialectically, by going out of the self and investigating external multiplicity, and then returning inward into the self to define and refine the forms of universality, and then to shape those forms into a noema design, and then to go back out of the self again in external reality to further work on this refinement. And it's a complete dialectical circle of going out and then back in, out and then back within the introspective self of mystical union. Excellent beginning. That's our introduction, pages 13 to 33. We will jump into the main manuscript in our next lesson, page 34.